I'm 23 years old, and I work as a freelance graphic designer. My life is mostly quiet, working from my tiny apartment, occasionally meeting friends and dreaming about something more. Something exciting. But nothing could have prepared me for how Jake would turn my world upside down. This is the kind of story that stays with you, the kind you can't tell without feeling your cheeks flush. It's a story of touches that linger too long, of stolen moments that set your whole body on fire. And yes, it's hot, intense in a way that makes your breath catch and your heart race. My heart raced as I stepped off the plane, feeling a strange mix of excitement and nervousness. I hadn't seen Jake in years, not since we were awkward teenagers spending summers at Grandma's house. Yes, Jake is my cousin. He was now 26 and living in a city that buzzed with energy and charm. When Jake greeted me at the airport, I was struck by how much he had changed. He had the kind of effortless confidence that drew people in, making me feel both intrigued and self-conscious. The first few days were filled with family dinners and sightseeing, but my mind kept drifting back to Jake. He wasn't shy, his comments always laced with humor that made me laugh and blush at the same time. "You've grown up, haven't you?" he said one afternoon, his eyes lingering on me a moment longer than they should have. I felt a flutter in my chest, but masked it with a playful grin. "And you've turned into quite the charmer, Jake." I couldn't help but test the waters. Little by little, I started to see just how far his teasing could go. A light touch on his arm here, a coy smile there. He responded with humor, but I caught the flicker of something else in his gaze, something that sent a thrill down my spine. One evening, while the family gathered in the living room, Jake and I sat in a quiet corner. Our conversation drifted into uncharted territory, and I could feel the tension building between us. "I bet guys don't make you blush like this back home," he teased, his smirk as cocky as ever. "Maybe they do," I shot back, raising an eyebrow. "But none of them were brave enough to call me out on it." Jake chuckled, leaning just a little closer. "Well, I guess I've always been the daring type. Or maybe it's just you bringing it out of me." The heat between us was impossible to ignore, his words laced with something that made my stomach flip. It was reckless, dangerous, but thrilling all the same. And in that moment, I didn't care how wrong it was, I just wanted more. The cool evening air brushed against my skin as I sat on a bench in the park, nervously glancing at my phone. I had sent Jake a message earlier, asking him to meet me here, away from prying family eyes. I wasn't sure what I expected, but the thought of seeing him again, alone this time, sent my heart into overdrive. When he arrived, his hands tucked casually into the pockets of his jeans, I couldn't help but smile. Jake had a way of making everything feel easy, even when my nerves were anything but. "So, what's this about?" he asked with a teasing grin as he sat beside me, close enough that our knees almost touched. "I just needed some fresh air," I said, trying to sound nonchalant, though my voice betrayed me. "And some company." His gaze lingered on me, softer this time, as if he could see through the walls I was trying to put up. "You've got a funny way of asking for it." I laughed nervously, and for a moment we sat in silence, the sounds of the park filling the space between us. But the quiet didn't last long. I turned to him, my courage emboldened by the darkness surrounding us. Jake broke the silence first, his voice low and hesitant. "Do you ever think about us?" My heart skipped a beat, and I turned to face him, caught off guard by his question. "Jake," I began carefully, "we're cousins." He nodded, a small, almost defiant smile tugging at the corner of his lips. "I know. But you've heard of people who are cousins and still, date, even get married." I searched his eyes, unsure if he was joking or completely serious. I admitted softly, my cheeks warming under his steady gaze. It's not like it hasn't crossed my mind before. His expression shifted, the teasing spark replaced by something deeper, something that made my pulse race. So, it's not just me, he said, his voice quieter now, as if he was admitting a secret he held onto for too long. I hesitated for only a moment before leaning in, my heart pounding in my chest. The kiss was tentative, testing, but when his lips responded to mine, I knew there was no turning back. The kiss started soft, tentative, but quickly deepened as the tension between us ignited. His hand slid to the small of my back, and for a moment, it felt like the world around us disappeared. When we finally broke apart, I could see the conflict in his eyes, mirroring my own. "This is crazy," he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. "Maybe," I admitted, my fingers still resting lightly on his chest. "But it feels right, doesn't it?" He didn't answer, not with words. Instead, he leaned in again, capturing my lips in another kiss that sent a rush of heat through my entire body. His hand slid to my waist, pulling me closer, and I felt myself giving in completely. But then, something in me stirred, an instinct, a fleeting sense of caution. My hands found his chest, and gently, I pushed him back, breaking the kiss. My breath was uneven as I looked up at him, his expression a mixture of surprise and frustration. "Jake," I murmured, my voice trembling, it's too fast." He exhaled slowly, his forehead coming to rest against mine. "You're right," he said, though his voice was thick with reluctance. "We shouldn't rush this." I nodded, trying to steady the whirlwind of emotions coursing through me. "It's not that I don't want to," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. "You don't have to explain," he interrupted softly, his hands still resting on my hips. "I get it." We sat there for a while longer, the tension still palpable but tempered now by the understanding between us. Jake's thumb brushed against my hand, a small gesture that felt intimate in its simplicity. As we eventually stood to leave, I glanced at him, a mixture of longing and anticipation settling in my chest. I knew that whatever was building between us wasn't going to go away. It was only a matter of time before we crossed a line we couldn't return from, and when that happened, I wanted it to be on our terms. The next day, Jake's name flashed across my phone. I hesitated for a moment before answering. "Hey," he said, his voice casual, but I could hear the underlying tension. "I was thinking, maybe we should meet up. Somewhere private. A hotel, maybe?" I swallowed, the memory of our kiss still fresh in my mind. "A hotel?" I repeated, my voice trembling slightly. "Yeah, somewhere we won't have to worry about anyone finding out," he replied. I felt a rush of excitement mixed with hesitation. But then, I remembered the heat between us, the way his lips had felt against mine. Without another word, I agreed. "I'll meet you there." The hotel room door clicked shut behind me, sealing us in a world far removed from prying eyes and the rules we were breaking. My pulse quickened as I turned to face Jake, who stood just a few steps away. The soft light in the room cast a golden glow on his face, making his blue eyes even more intense. Jake took a step closer, his eyes locked on mine. My breath hitched as he reached out, his fingers brushing against my cheek, trailing down to my jaw. The simple touch sent a ripple of heat through me, and I leaned into it, craving more. "You know there's no going back after this," he said softly, his voice low and rough. "I don't care," I whispered, my voice trembling with a mix of nerves and anticipation. His hand slid to the back of my neck, pulling me closer until our lips met. The kiss was nothing like the hesitant one in the park. It was deep, hungry, filled with a need we could no longer deny. I clung to him, my hands gripping his shirt as his mouth moved against mine, exploring, claiming. Jake's hands roamed down my back, his touch firm yet gentle as he traced the curve of my waist. Every brush of his fingers left a trail of fire on my skin, and I felt myself melting into him. My heart pounded as he guided me toward the bed, our lips never breaking apart. When I fell back onto the soft mattress, he followed, his weight pressing against me in a way that made my whole body ache with longing. His hands slid under my shirt, his touch warm and deliberate as he explored every inch of me. I gasped as his lips moved to my neck, his breath hot against my skin. Time seemed to blur as we gave ourselves to the moment, our touches growing bolder, our kisses deeper. The tension that had been building for days finally broke, and we lost ourselves in each other completely. We spent the entire day wrapped in each other's arms, our bodies tangled together in a way that felt both forbidden and perfect. The sun rose and set outside the window, but inside, time stood still. By the time we finally pulled apart, exhaustion and contentment washing over us. Jake traced circles on my shoulder with his fingers as I rested my head on his chest. "What do we do now?" I asked quietly, my voice barely audible over the sound of his heartbeat. He sighed, his chest rising and falling beneath me. "We figure it out. Together." But even as he said the words, I knew it wouldn't be easy. Our family would never understand, and the world outside this room would be far less kind. Yet as I lay there, my hand resting over his heart, I knew one thing for certain: I didn't regret a single moment.